You said before you started TishTash you wanted to find balance, which you didn't find. Panic attacks, anxiety. Like, how do you enable yourself to sleep at night?
Having a business and being an entrepreneur, go in a little bit kind of rose-tinted glasses, right? Thinking it is going to be like the freedom, the travel, and like if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? You know, thinking, what am I doing with my life? And you know, at least before I had a really well-paid corporate job, like, and now I'm more stressed and I can't even go into Harvey Nichols. You know, it's that kind of like you do question your kind of judgment.
Because I don't think enough people realise that it's going to impact everything. It's not just tough financially, but it's tough physically, because like you said, you don't have time to work out or move. Even there's some days you forget to eat. When you are the founder or the leader, typically there's no one to pick you up. You have to do it yourself. It's
such a lonely journey. My business ruined my life, or my business, you know, it ruined my health, or you know, I have said those things and I've been at the lowest points. This is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Welcome back to the Well On Our Way podcast. Today, I'm joined by Tash Hatherall, the founder and CEO of the leading independent communications agency, TishTash Communications. Tash is one of the truly authentic leaders here in Dubai, and she's extremely passionate about mental health and women in the workplace. Enjoy the episode. Tash, welcome to Well On Our Way.
Thank you.
We're going to dive straight in. We're only connected on LinkedIn. We've never met each other until 5 minutes ago. So I sent a few feelers out to say, give me some insight on, you know, what's Tash like? Who is Tash? Give me some words to describe her. And I got back kind, authentic, empowering, not afraid to be vulnerable, leads with your heart. They were the words I got back from the people I reached out to. Tell me something from your you know, earlier in your life or an event in your life. How did you become that leader, someone that leads with such authenticity and passion? Because that's quite rare to have a description like that. So tell me, how did you get that description? Because they didn't know that you didn't know I was asking that question.
No.
So
and
that's a pretty incredible description. So how did that happen?
I'm really happy with that actually.
Oh, you should be.
I think I've always, I think there's so many things that get us to where we are today. And, you know, if I look back, I think maybe, you know, in my 20s, I thought I had what was my dream job. And it was with a female boss. And it was probably one of the least empowering experiences of my life, which actually ended up making me change complete direction in my life, and also having very clear views on kind of what a leader or a boss should be. And I think that has always been when you know, obviously I always talk about being the, you know, accidental entrepreneur, that I never necessarily planned this journey. But when I ended up having my own business and team, I think I've always been led by never wanting someone to walk in the door of my office or my business and feel like I felt when I was in that situation. So I kind of, you know, I really strongly feel that, you know, I never want anyone to feel sad, upset, afraid or anything coming to work. I mean, of course, probably all of us would rather maybe not work and be on a yacht or something. But I think it's kind of, you know, that to me, you know, I thought, I've always realised, you know, like actually you have people's careers and lives, actually you can change the whole course of their lives. So I think that's something that really, really stayed with me for a long time, and kind of really, you know, seeing what I didn't want to be made me kind of realise who I did want to be. And I think, you know, there's so much, I feel that kindness is a strength, and all these things, you know, empathy, you know, even vulnerability, they are strengths. They're not, for a long time I think people have, you know, put them out as being weak or something, and I really don't believe that is the case, because actually it takes really digging deep sometimes, even when people maybe don't always deserve, or, you know, kindness or to be treated, to kind of, you know, to sort of stay true to that.
What is it that's in you that enables you to continue leading with kindness and empathy and vulnerability? Because it's not natural for most people, and I would say it's certainly not easy. And I'm sure there's times where you've even struggled yourself.
Yeah.
How do you enable that to happen on a continuous basis? Because again, there's one thing for one person to say it about you, but it's another thing for, you know, a lot of people to say it about you. So how how do you enable yourself to continue to lead in that manner?
I think, we all have moments, and, there's times, for example, when something, has happened maybe in my business, and I'm still really connected to like a lot of my previous bosses. For the one, obviously, situation that I had that was less great, I have some amazing bosses and mentors, and sometimes I do sense check in with them and everything. And it's very, I think when extreme circumstance or negative things happen, it's really easy to revert to, being another way. But I'm kind of very much like, I don't want to change myself because of external factors or other kind of people. I think I have to rein myself in some days, and I think, but I believe, I like to be able to sleep at night knowing, that I did the right thing. To me, it's really, really important. I'm really, really value led, and, in the way that I work. And like, that's why sometimes I joke I'm never going to be rich, because I kind of like, I know it matters to me who I work with, who I represent. Like, if people don't align with me and my values, then I really genuinely either don't want to work with them or I won't work with them. And I think that goes through everything to me, even with team. I think I'm very, I believe in my biggest learning in business is gut instinct and like trust your gut, because I think that I was saying like probably 3 times in business that I really went against my gut. It was terrible. So now I just kind of like, keep joking a little bit, kind of, I know now with lots of talk about conscious leadership and things, but I always say I'm a bit woo, but it's kind of, I feel like that's kind of, it's, I do trust myself, and kind of I try and go back to, I think, what matters to me and how I want to be and how I want to feel at the end of the day.
I think it comes down to how you define rich or wealth,
totally.
Right? And we've kind of segued nicely quite quickly into the likes of sleep, and this has been a consistent theme in all of my discussions with the various founders that have been on the podcast so far, and that it's probably the most undervalued commodity or resource or ultimately source of wealth. I think if you've got the ability to go to sleep at night with a clear conscience and a clear, relaxed mind, then there's not many better feelings than that. And conversely, there's not many worse feelings than going to bed with worry and 100 things on your to-do list, and like you say, you've maybe gone against your gut or your principles, and you're beating yourself up about it. So how does sleep play a part in your life and business? Because for me, it's been huge, and a huge shift from total neglect to total appreciation. How has it worked for you?
I mean, I think sleep is probably for me the number one thing I try and keep consistent health-wise. I think it does affect everything. Obviously trickles down to hormone, everything. I, as I said, very similarly, I didn't always, I was, particularly when I was younger, I would, have such capacity for work and such a drive that I was able to function 2-3 hours sleep. Now in my mid-40s, it's one of those realities as well. You just definitely can't do an all-nighter anymore. But I'm very, very, that's my one non-negotiable now, sleep. I'll always have 8 or 9 hours. I'm a 5 a.m. club person, so I'm generally
early bedtime then.
Exactly. I go to bed at 9, and then, both me and my husband are kind of on the same kind of, we're both, early to bed, early to rise. So it works with our lifestyle.
Helps
but no, I'm really where, sleep is my non-negotiable.
I'm quite confident that if you weren't so disciplined with your sleep, that you wouldn't be able to lead with such empathy and kindness all the time. I think many leaders who don't have those traits or skills probably don't have enough sleep either. I would be willing to place a fairly large bet on those cause and effects, but like I said, I think sleep's so important. And you said like when you're younger, you're able to function. I think it's only as you get older you realise that I was functioning, but I wasn't thriving. I wasn't doing my best work. I wasn't feeling my best self. And it's no surprise when stress creeps in and burnout creeps in, and then all of a sudden it's too late. So sleep is so important. And as the whole point of this podcast and these discussions is to actually unearth the core components to long-term success. Because without sleep, without good nutrition and basic movement, you're not gonna be able to survive long enough as a human, let alone as a business. So tell me, you said you were an accidental entrepreneur. Tell me kind of your, school, university. I see that you did degrees, multiple, marketing, psychology, and consumer behavior, if I've got that right, probably in the wrong order.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to think, I could build a business, run a business, and how did that happen? Talk me through that journey.
I always planned to be a psychiatrist, and then I, went sort of the academic route that way, and then I think I realised that I was going to have to sleep in hospitals if I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and that didn't really appeal that much. So then I ended up going down the research and into academic sort of psychology, blending with marketing, consumer behaviour. Then one day I realised I didn't want to be an academic either, and so then I ended up going into I got into a graduate scheme in the ads sort of in comms world. I'd had a really, really great career in sort of UK and working internationally. And then I wanted to tick off working abroad, so I came to the Middle East 15 years ago, and I worked for the government here at a time when digitising a lot of their media properties, so radio, TV. And so I'd had a really, really amazing kind of corporate and sort of big brand, big agency career. I honestly never really had thought about, I think if I look back now, there were signs, I had my own business selling my own art when I was in the UK as well. That was kind of my side hustle to help with the stress of a corporate job. I love painting. So probably I always say I'm accidental, but there was always a little bit of entrepreneurial spirit. And then I'd worked for 2 years here and had quite a stressful job, done some amazing work. And then I thought, you know what, I'm actually just going to take some time out, and I'm going to go to yoga, and I'm going to, live a very more balanced life than I have been living. And so that was 13 years ago. And my plan was just to rebalance a bit of freelance work, had some good connections here with a little bit of kind of, travel, all these things. And then obviously it was 13 years ago that I set up TishTash. And then I pretty much joke now that probably for the last 13 years, I think I've worked 7 days a week and probably had less balance than I ever thought. But I think for me, I really, really thought I was going freelance. And I think even probably 6 years into TishTash, even with an office, I was still a little bit in denial and so I think I kind of fought against it a lot. It was like, no, I'm just freelance. So I'm just kind of, and then you get to a stage where you kind of look around and you're like, actually, so even I think it took me even sort of probably even up to 10 years of business. I think when people like you referring to you as a leader or different things, it's kind of, I think, I still was fighting against it.
At what point, you said 6-10 years, how did that acceptance make you feel that you were an entrepreneur, you are a founder, you are a business leader, not just a freelancer, and you certainly haven't got any balance when it comes maybe less of a balance than you were kind of aiming to achieve. How did that kind of acceptance process feel? Because I think for many entrepreneurs it is difficult to kind of find your identity. You have to be everything for a long time, forever in many cases. How did that kind of, what changed in you, I guess is my question.
I really believe that everything happens to get you to where you need to be. And I think, there's different things along my journey where I think COVID was a real turning point, I think, for a lot of people. I think I ended up it was something that I sort of my own journey, I had quite a reasonable following on Instagram. And then it was probably the third week into lockdown, and a lot of people, we'd had 80% of our clients put things on hold, and have a big team, and so it was a really horrendous time. And then one day I just had I'm a writer. I always, obviously in my line of work, I'm a bit wordy, and it's, I had a complete, meltdown on Instagram where I literally probably did repeated stories sharing, the reality of what it was like to own a business in COVID times. And it was one of those things I think I just did it. It just came
Yeah.
And then I think that the next day I woke up and I kind of was like, oh no, what did I do? But then it was like a reaction. Like, I don't think I've ever obviously had so many people just respond back.
Yeah.
And then obviously to fast forward, it went on. I ended up writing this daily diary, the COVID diary, for 2 years every day on Instagram, which then won 2 awards and went on. So my kind of searing honesty about the reality really resonated. And I think, in terms of that, for me, I think there were so many people that, I don't know, I think the discussions I had, and actually probably then I realized that actually, because I kept saying I'm not a leader, or I'm not like, and then I actually thought, actually maybe I am actually better at this, and I am actually kind of, I do know what I'm doing a little bit. So I know that was quite a weird time for me in sort of, obviously I think I really started to find a different sort of, in terms of, I felt able to be vulnerable and honest about that. And then from that time, it's obviously definitely gone in a very sort of different path, even with the things that I've been asked to do personally and through my business and things. And, if I have to think about moments, that was definitely one that kind of like, and also, when you're having to deal with livelihoods of, I think we saw so many examples of way companies treated their staff in COVID, which were awful. And I think, for me, sometimes I think, I know that I treat, even if it was terrible times, I feel like I kind of got that right, and I did the right thing, and I kind of, over communicating and like really kind of, standing there side by side with my team and everything. So I think, when you are in those kind of really, really harsh situations, I think it definitely shows kind of the measure of people, and also, it shows you kind of like, what you're capable of as well.
Yeah, and I think perhaps the way in which you maybe had defined a leader, right, in your mind before was very different to how you were leading, right? So actually, maybe the definitions didn't match, but actually your leadership style was what, well, certainly your team needed and what the world needs more of. And certainly, running any business at any time is tough. But running a business and keeping a business going during COVID, particularly a small business or a early stage business, was very, very difficult. And the amount of pressure, like the mental pressures, emotional pressures, like you said, making sure people get paid, if not all of their salary, some of their salary, like, keeping livelihoods going, like that's a lot of pressure to absorb. And I think the fact that you were able to kind of like release some of that pressure through your COVID diary was, probably a blessing in the end, because it showed authenticity, it showed vulnerability, and maybe that kind of set a new path or a more kind of visible path for you as a leader in Dubai. And, like I said, since COVID, there's certainly been a fundamental shift in way of working, in way of communicating, and, leadership. You talked about conscious leadership and stuff like that. So, all of that is needed, but, people have to go first, and you were definitely one of those. So, for me, I'll give you an example first. COVID, was very challenging. We had to either let people go, we had to restructure salaries, or, run salary sacrifice programs, which, I think most organizations had to. But as a small business, you're so close to the team. You almost, know everyone and everything, and kids or wives or husbands, the direct impact that the job that you're creating is having on those individuals and those families. So, that's very tough. That was definitely one of the most challenging points, if not a low point. Talk to me about a low point in the journey of building TishTash, either from a business perspective or a personal perspective, and how have you picked yourself up, dusted yourself off, and carried on? Because again, when you're at the top, when you are the founder or the leader, typically there's no one to pick you up. You have to do it yourself. So, talk me through, one of or some of those low points along the way, and how you've kind of come out the other side.
Yeah, I mean, for obviously, it was my business. I founded myself. It's always been completely self-funded. And, I think people don't realize how it is actually, like, it's such a lonely journey when you do it kind of yourself.
Yeah.
And then it was sort of about 9 years ago, obviously I met Polly, who is now at MD, and she has a small stake in TishTash. And honestly, I think since I met, I joke that kind of like, well, she just moved to the country fresh. And so she was looking for a job. And at the time, her salary expectations were way beyond what I could afford and everything. But 3 months later, we were still thinking about each other. And then, we managed to make it work, and I think it was almost like finding the one. I think for me, definitely some of the lows and the loneliness of doing it have been so much better since I had someone to share it with. And, I joke that half the time I come to work because I love spending time with her, and we genuinely have, it's like, when I'm down, she's generally, we kind of keep each other going through. So I think, just having someone because it is quite lonely, especially now. I mean, we're nearly 70 at work, and I think, that thing where, maybe you've always been like maybe the popular one at work, and all of a sudden now you're the boss, and that you see them, they all go out together and you don't get invited. And it's like kind of like, it's that kind of you have to wrestle thinking, exactly, that was like, they all went out and didn't invite me. It's like kind of, so at least it's nice having someone to kind of share it with. I think, there's always, a couple of things that stand out. I think learnings as well. Probably, we were very lucky. End of our first year, we won a massive contract, which in a way that was probably step change TishTash and put us onto the trajectory for where we are today, which was phenomenal for us. And it ended up being 80% of our business for about 5 years. And then one day, that thing where something completely out of your control, literally we were called into a meeting and it was literally that, it was taken away from us. And I think, that learning initially of having probably all eggs in one basket almost, I think that was a big learning for me in terms of, diversification and never letting that be the case again. And I did, it was a couple of or a few actually hairy months thinking, so I think sometimes that first big loss when you've kind of, we've got so many salaries and so many livelihoods. And I think for me, that's always been the one non-negotiable. Like I hear of so many companies that just don't pay their staff or are late paying their staff. And to me, it's like, that's non-negotiable. I've always, in 13 years, made sure everyone's paid on time, even in COVID. And so it's, that kept me awake a lot. And then, I think a joke like kind of, most people at some point in business will have legal matters or court cases to deal with here. And that happened to me once again, not necessarily something of my making. And I ended up spending 2 years on a court case, which I would say was probably some of the lowest points actually, even I'd say like career wise and business wise, but also personally, I found it very, I've talked very openly about like having anxiety and panic attacks. And I felt when something's so out of your control as well. And like, you're in particularly when it's a country where you don't speak the language or not, everything is in Arabic and you're there and it is completely just all of it's out of your control. And as someone that's I'm very organised, very controlled. That really, for me, I was going through phases where I was having like 6 panic attacks a day. And it really, really affected my wellness as well as, and now I can look back, it was quite a while ago now, and I can probably look back and actually, if that hadn't have happened, then, there's other things that would, it really has all, fed my path. But, like, for example, now I'm really, it always helps you. I had my first lawyer was terrible. You always find out the hard way. Then obviously now I've got an amazing lawyer, a law firm. And so these things, so at least I'm now I can say actually it helped me get a really great lawyer. And I always think a business should have a law firm, even if they don't need one for when they do need it. And then I think also the whole thing just kind of made me feel, really, I feel now that if presented in a situation where I had to choose to go down a court case route versus not, I believe there's always a way not to do that. And I think I think at the time as well, like, I felt very impassioned about being right and,
standing up for what you believe in.
Exactly. And but the reality is, would I waste 2 years of my life again in court? I probably would throw money at it to go away because actually, for me, wellness, mental health, it was not worth it.
You talked earlier about balance. You talked then just around, panic attacks and anxiety. You talk a lot about mental health. You kind of advocate for mental health, do a lot of work in the space. Was that your first kind of eye-opening experience with regards to how, building and running a business can have such a negative effect on one's mental health? Or had there been previous experiences where your mental health had been knocked, for want of a better word, through the process?
It's funny, in the journey, I kind of particularly in the low points, I have, made really bold statements like, my business ruined my life, or my business, it ruined my health, or, I have said those things, and I've been at the lowest points. And I definitely have felt it in the, I always say it's the highest highs and the lowest lows.
Yeah.
And even now, we've just turned 13, but I probably still this week I've already probably questioned what I'm doing. And I think that is normal.
Yeah.
Lost my train of thought.
It's all right. You've already said that you work 7 days a week.
Yes.
And you said before you started TishTash you wanted to find balance, which you didn't find. If I've understood correctly.
No.
How do you prevent panic attacks, anxiety?
Yeah.
Like, how do you enable yourself to sleep at night? Like, what have you learned through the process to help manage your mental health?
I definitely look. As talk about sleep, I know now the things where, as a business owner, you don't, there are going to be stressful times. There are going to be times, where you are worrying about paying people and things. So I think at least knowing the factors around it that can help.
Yeah.
So good sleep, nutrition,
Good lawyer.
Good nutrition, I think for a long time as well, I used to be very, very active, really into probably before I early days, I was at the gym 5 times a week. And then I think maybe in the middle period, I was lost, became, I forgot a lot of things, in terms of it just put by the wayside. And now I've got, I've got a trainer, and I have a certain number of, I make that a non-negotiable as well, having fitness in my life as well, and moving. So I think having a lot of those things, I think if I look back now, whilst I feel that I kind of, some of the extremes came out owning a business, like the panic attacks, the anxiety. Even if I look back now into my teens, I can see that there were actually signs, but then I think it is only when you're in extreme circumstances that they kind of come out. And I think it definitely, I've got a lot of friends now who have probably, I probably have got one of the most mature businesses, and they're maybe earlier on starting, and they come to me and they're like, I think the reality is most of us, a lot of people who really want to go into having a business and being an entrepreneur, go in a little bit kind of rose-tinted glasses, right? Thinking it is going to be the freedom, the travel, and I've had so many friends who have come to me and why didn't you tell me it was like this? Yeah. Or, it's been 8 months and I've not been able to pay myself. And it's and this is the reality. It is I think it is, and that's why the quotes was it if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? And it is, and I've done a lot of great things in my life. I have got 3 degrees. I have had really, really high level corporate jobs. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, and I am even now, the fact that I've got to 13 years this month.
Which is incredible, by the way.
We
should pause and reflect on that, because doing 13 years anywhere is an achievement, but 13 years here is and self-funded, as you've mentioned, is a particular achievement. So I'll give you the pat on the back if you're not going to give it. Give you one yourself. So you said you're married.
Yes.
Your partner's from Iraq. You've been married 9 years.
Yes.
How has the journey of building the business, and I assume you were dating for a period before that 9 years, how has that impacted positively or negatively the relationship with your partner? Because I think, as you mentioned, people that go into business with rose-tinted glasses on, or perhaps let's call it naively, because they see what they see on Instagram and whatnot, or even LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn nowadays is just as good at showing authenticity, but just as bad at over glamorizing entrepreneurship. But how has that impacted your your relationship, because I don't think enough people realize that it's going to impact everything. It's not just tough financially, but it's tough physically, because like you said, you don't have time to work out or move. Even there's some days you forget to eat.
Yeah.
It's tough mentally, as you've already mentioned. It's tough emotionally. So how has that impacted your relationship, and how have you ended up, being able to, because you have to find a balance on that particular topic. So how have you managed to strike that balance so that both the relationship and the business can thrive at the same time?
I mean, I met my husband when I literally the same year I just started my business. So that was when it first started. It was when I was working from home, and it was
when
just
you were a
me.
true freelancer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so things like, I could go and go to cinema in the daytime. I could go, and it was kind of, in many ways, it was kind of very different for the first couple of years until it was year 2, and then we got an office, and then everything very, very much step changed. As soon as I always say, as soon as you get an office, all the bills go up, and then everything kind of. So my husband now likes to tell me regularly that obviously one of the first things I ever told him was, when my company gets bigger, it will get easier. And
does he remind you with a smile on his face by any chance?
Literally, it is. Even now, I think, even though probably over Christmas he's still, because I guess I never done it before. I honestly did think that when you have more people and a bigger team, and yes, obviously the first year, yes, you're everything. You're doing from accountant to, for me, I was like scanning magazines, doing deliveries, and then all of a sudden, you think, actually, when I've got more people to do these things, my life's going to get better. And then now, we've got, I've got my main business, but I've also got other businesses as well. I've got other ones that I invested in. And so it's, I don't even think I could comprehend how, it is today back then, because it is all of a sudden now it is, it's harder than ever. And yet I really, really did think it was, I don't know what I thought I'd be doing or it would be, but I definitely really, really did tell my husband that. And so he, likes to tell me that regularly. And it is true. He always says sometimes, he's, I said, I've lived this with you, and ironically, so my husband, he was a professional athlete and UFC fighter. Right. So when we first met, and then obviously he's since retired, and he's now set up. He's gone into although he's actually set up his own business as well. Yeah. So he's earlier on in that. Okay. And so now we both of us are on the same journey. But I see him he's probably 2 years in, and sometimes he's losing his mind on something, and I'm just kind of so you can
say to him, when it's bigger, it'll be easier.
Exactly. So, I think, you kind of have to sort of, I think having a sense of humor definitely, and now, look, I'd say, even though I say lots of things are harder, we've got to the stage where, I have got a really amazing, partner and MD. I've got a really amazing senior leadership team. Yeah. So we've started being able to travel. I mean, the reality is I'm always going to be, I do love what I do. I think that's the thing, when you've got passion, you love it, that's what gets you through. And I always say that if you're doing something that you don't love, that's not, you're never going to get through the bad times. No. So make sure you love what you do. Yeah. So at least now it's I'm happy, that I'm always going to have to tick things over, but we've started being able to travel because both of us are obviously self-employed, and you can work from anywhere most of the time. So last year we went to the Maldives for a week on holiday, and then we had such a good time, and it was what, we can just work from here. So I ended up staying for another week and a half, and just work from there. And it's things like that now I can do that. And likewise, we went to 3, I've been working a lot in the US with clients, and so my husband comes with us, and we add on extra time and we travel. So I think we're trying to, whilst I work hard, we work hard, we're trying to now be able to at least use it to live and do the things which actually, make us happy. Yeah. So.
And are there certain rules or principles that you've put in place with your husband? How do you... It's hard. The reason I'm asking is because, maybe it's a bit of self-therapy, you never know, but it's hard, right? My wife doesn't, she's not an entrepreneur. But she, we've been together for 18 years, so she's seen me through several businesses, and obviously Level the last 7 or 8 years. You're almost like coming out of battle on a daily basis, and then you have to give the rest of yourself, whatever's left, to your partner. And I think that's again one of the most underlooked aspects of entrepreneurship is the impact on your other half. Whether that's your husband, wife, partner, whatever. And it probably took me too long actually to realize that, I'm actually not bringing my best self back to the table, the dining table, so to speak, at the end of the day, because I'm exhausted. And I think that was definitely one of the learning points for me, is how to better manage that, how to better manage my energy, so I'm not completely void of energy at the end of the day and have nothing left to give or say. What do you do? How do you manage yourself in that respect?
I mean, I've probably, had similar things to you, especially as, the industry I work in, it's a very people pleasing industry, it's like with media, with clients, and so like even my husband would say to me, like, everyone else gets the best of you, because it is all day long, you're smiling, you're happy, and then he obviously gets like whatever troll ogre like comes home. So now, we've kind of like, I've tried different ways over the years. The reality is I'm never going to be able to probably have like a 2-day weekend. It's like, and I genuinely, I'd rather keep on top of things, but we try and do Saturday is our one day that we try not open laptops and have as our day. And so at least we've had that, obviously things like, have like, time in the evening and things like that. But the reality is sometimes, if we're just sitting watching TV, I will sit on my laptop and work at things. I think it's a bit trial and error. I think, we just... and it might be that now I've, tried to even like leave. I get to the office early and then I try and leave by like, 3. So I've just tried to, I think, make it work better for my life. So at least then I can go home and, just use the best of the things, the good points of being self-employed, so then I can go and have some time. Maybe we'll go to the cinema in the afternoon or something, so I think we've
like in the freelancer days.
Exactly, but I think we're trying to like, make things work for both of our lives as well. And I think the reality is, right now, obviously my husband's gone back and he's got a startup. And so a lot of it kind of like the responsibility, a lot of it's on me at the moment in terms of like primary breadwinner. So, I hate saying it kind of like to my husband, that you kind of like, your other half has to kind of like, sort of, you just got to go with who, where it, who's earning and where, at the time. But we make it work, and I think we both, realise, I mean, haven't got children, we really wanted children. I spoke very honestly about our daughter died at birth, and we had, we've had multiple years of IVF and fertility treatment. And so that's something that I've been very vocal about, and and balancing that with being an entrepreneur and having a business as well. So for us, we're not going to have children now, and I think when that's our reality as well, it's about we're making a life that's not what we planned or hoped we would have, but it is what we're left with. So, for us, the reality is it's not. We are. When you're looking at something which obviously we've got family, we've got nieces and nephews, things, but when I think. It's when you're in that kind of like childless kind of thing as well, you've got to create meaning through other things. And so for us, that's why obviously we're building businesses, we've been investing in property, we've been traveling. And I think, so maybe that's a little bit of a different path for us because we haven't got like, children. But I think both of us get meaning and enjoy work. So I think, saying to the other person, you can't like, the whole weekend and everything, it's just putting in like some elements that kind of work, I think.
Yeah. And I think, number one, every marriage is different. Number two, every entrepreneur is different. But I think, the thing that I've learned is that it just takes, you have to work at it, right? And I think any marriage you have to, but I think particularly when you have such an unstructured pathway, as an entrepreneur building a business, like you can't say, oh no, I won't work at weekends, or you can't even guarantee that you'll watch a whole film and not check your phone or your email or whatever. So, it is very difficult. You mentioned that you're investing in property, you're invested in other businesses. I think you're on boards of certain associations. Let's come back to this principle of balance that you alluded to earlier in the conversation. How are you able to bring your best self to all of those different responsibilities? How do you get the best out of yourself in those different environments and those different situations?
I want to, there's so much I feel passionate about, and there's so much I want to do.
Yeah.
That, for example, like there's certain businesses that I've invested in, like I'm really passionate about health, wellness, women's health. And I kind of know that obviously I have lots that I can bring and give. So particularly, when I meet amazing people on my journey, it's like kind of like, I want to kind of like, I really want to work with them. So I think, we're the days we're in now, right? I think having one thing in our life or even one source of income, I think that's something that a lot of us are doing, right? A lot of people, even people that work for me, a lot of them got side hustles and things. It's like we all want to, I guess we're living longer, we want to do different things. So I believe in people being able to kind of do a few different things. And I think that's what I'm doing for myself. It's like kind of like, so having multiple streams of income and also multiple things, because I enjoy different things. So it's hard not to get overstretched, but I think I'm trying to do it so there's different things that all bring me joy, so it doesn't feel like it's an overwhelming amount of things. I actually did go into another startup with a friend, and I really love the business, really believe in it, but I think it was about 6 months in. And I think one day I kind of just woke up and I was just like, I think my own business was probably about 11 at the time. And so it was only a couple of years ago. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to go down this path. And actually I ended up exiting from that. So I think I'm quite good now at when things don't work for me. I don't just kind of stay doing that. I'm kind of very like, I have got a good measure of myself and what brings me joy and what I want to do.
Have you always had the ability to say no, or is that something that you've developed over time? Because I think, as you build a business, you just want to say yes to everything, every contract, every client, every request. And actually, I think one of the things I've learned is that the quicker you learn how to say no, the better off you are, both in the short, medium and long term. So is that something you've always been good at, or is that something that's developed over time?
No, but by nature of the job I do, and I think I'm a total people pleaser. So I've been terrible at saying no. And I still am I'd say, look, I mean, I'm not all things, I'm not great, but I feel like probably, I hate saying it's an age thing as well, but I definitely think in 40s, kind of like I've become a lot better at kind of saying no and doing that. I'm still really terrible at putting myself first, and that's something that I'm still working on. I'm really, I would always put myself at the back of the queue, that kind of like, was it put your oxygen mask on first? I'm literally so terrible at that. I will always make sure, even if I'm kind of like, I don't know, like got a seriously ill, I'll still make sure everyone else is okay before I go and like to hospital and sort myself out. So that's a key thing for me to work on, and why I can't put myself more at the front of the queue. But otherwise, no, I'm definitely getting better at kind of knowing my boundaries and saying no.
Well, it's early 2025, so I'm going to hold you to account on that one of putting yourself first, or certainly further towards the front of the queue in 2025. You said earlier on that you early on in your career had a side hustle of your own, and now you have kind of multiple income streams or multiple responsibilities, and I truly believe that it's important not just to keep you on your toes and keep you sharp, but to challenge you in different environments, to meet different people, create different networks. So I'm a big supporter of that too. Are there people within TishTash? You said, there are a few others. Is that something that's now kind of brewing in TishTash's culture? Are there others who are doing their own thing too, and maybe kind of following your lead, or seeing what you've done and think, well, if the boss can do it, then it's okay for me? No,
definitely not. And I look, I've had people that have gone and they've left and gone and launched their own successful businesses, and I always say that it's the toughest thing I've ever done, so I will literally support anyone wholeheartedly who wants to do the same. So I'm very, very open with all of my team, and I always say, like, look, if the time comes that you want to, just always have an honest conversation. I've had some, for example, that have maybe gone part-time where they build their side hustle. I kind of think, if you have that kind of culture of open honesty, transparency, then and then everything's on the table, then it works so much better. I've got even a lot of mine now, I feel like a lot of people are becoming travel counsellors now, and I've got quite a few of my team that do that as well, because they want to get all the discounts on their holidays and things as well. And a lot of my And also, I mean, we're known at TishTash, we're very big advocates. We're purely women. We're known for, being one of the sort of only companies that really has truly flexible working for working mothers.
Yeah.
That's something me and Polly, my MD, are really passionate about. And so there are, there's quite a few working mums who have got, they work the mornings, but they probably also sometimes they do maybe something else. So I'm kind of like, I believe, I want to be able to enable people and people that work for me to be able to make their life work for them.
Yeah.
And so I think, I'll always support, I support anyone wholeheartedly, as long as it's done the right way. So
Absolutely. You mentioned women's health or female health. What has that always been a passion, or is that something that you discovered your passion for throughout the journey of building TishTash? Talk to me how that kind of came about.
I think by the nature of I kind of sometimes, there's been a lot of, because we are sort of all women, and then about sort of maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, we were one of the first to launch menopause leave and period leave and things. And so we made a lot of headlines for that. And obviously we also, got a bit of kind of jest, we made, there was parodies about us and cartoons and things.
That's when you're doing something right.
That's what I thought too. So I think by the nature of what we do, it's our clients, a lot of it's very female. So, and comms generally is quite female, sort of heavy. So it was very accidental that I ended up with a fully female workplace, and being really female kind of focused. That was never the plan. But then I think we got to a stage where it was, we decided to own it. And I think because of the realities, if I was in the UK, US, I wouldn't have been able to have a fully female workforce. But here I think we were in a time where there was still a lot of work to be done in terms of creating a workplace or a work environment where women can truly flourish and have career, family and everything. So we just really, I don't know, Polly and I both, we probably are both, we are feminine, we are a bit feministic. So it's kind of, we just decided to own it. And then we've really the idea is that if you create and design a workplace for women and their needs, that they truly can flourish. And we're kind of both of us are really committed to that. We've, leading the way in policies, we have even from menopause, period leave through now we have work from anywhere, X number of weeks a year. So I think, you treat people as adults and as and I think people have got different work patterns according to what their need is. So I think, treat people as individuals, and what one person needs isn't necessarily what somebody else needs, but there'll be something else that they need. So I think it's been really interesting really digging deep into that kind of work culture and how best to motivate people and how best to get the best out of them. And I do believe, so many of our team have been with us 10 years, 9 years, 8 years. So, I think it's testament to the fact that, we have done something right.
And has people management always been one of the easier challenges or one of the greater challenges?
It's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
I think for me, I found financial, commercial things, because I don't really like money and things, and I've kind of buried my head a bit in this. I had to, I think, take my head out of the sand, because for years I was just kind of I realised actually no, I can't do that. But that was one of the learnings. But then also people, because you think the people thing is going to be, it's going to be okay. And then now I would say, particularly when we've got the size we are, and we're a culturally led company, things like, we've got obviously Great Place to Work accreditation. And so we pride ourselves on culture. So then it means the amount of time, I'd say probably 78% of my time is really actually still left on people and keeping the culture good at work. So, and it is really, really difficult. And I kind of don't think I'm bad at it, but I think I am even now at I try and I think getting to that place of empathy and understanding. I still do one-on-ones with every single member of my team every month, because me and Polly, we allocate a day or 2 days to that, because I want, even though obviously we've got a structure and everyone has line managers and we're very good at reporting, keeping that with line managers, I think it's still everyone to have an open door into us every month. And that's one that I'd say the most, all my friends who've got businesses, I say to them that is to me one of the biggest things I attribute success to, because even now I'm still trying to be that person. I know every single person's name in the company, which I think we're starting to get now, where it is sometimes I kind of have to Polly and I look at each other what's that person's name? Like, but I'm really, you know, that's really important to me to still know names and who people are. And now, even because I have that time with everybody every month, I still have a sense, I can tell if I feel someone's a bit off or kind of like, you know, and I'm like, actually just check in on that person. Like they maybe their demeanor seems a little bit different or, you know, and I know, and everyone still has that kind of, you know, sort of access in. That's really important to me. But I definitely like, you know, I'm struggling with the younger generations. I'm really honest about that. And I'm trying really hard. And me and Polly, we implemented reverse mentoring so we can, you know, you know, each pair, like our management team pair with a Gen Z and spend time with them. But even then I'm still struggling a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's hard to connect with everybody. And I think the one thing that I had to accept many years ago is that you can't please everybody either. And I think that's the, you know, for so many years, it would like eat me up if like someone was in a bad mood about something work related. I took it really personally, and you have to let go. You can't take it personally, and you know, not every single person is going to be happy every minute of every day, and that's something that takes a lot of getting kind of used to. So yeah, that definitely took a long while for me. You mentioned that financial wasn't your strength. You know, from a business perspective, you know, I assume on the journey we've talked about the fact that you've self-funded, you know, TishTash's growth and existence. How has, you know, your financial well-being kind of gone, you know, as you've grown the business? I assume not every month or year has been plain sailing. You know, and again, oftentimes, you know, financial stress is the leading kind of stressor, either leading towards burnout or relationship breakdowns or whatever, or, you know, ultimately business failure. So how have you managed kind of, you know, your own financial well-being through this journey?
I like creating new things. I'm quite, you know, I'm strategic and I am very creative. And I think so of all the things that when you end up with a business, all of a sudden you're everything, right? Your HR, your you know, accounts, and I don't think that was something that I was necessarily, you know, prepared for. Well, I think one of my things was that thing about, you know, outsource the things that really aren't like your kind of strength. I have had, you know, an accountant sort of now for quite, you know, a long time, and obviously we have in-house finance, and then things like that I've learned the hard way, like that I can't bury my head in the sand, or, you know, that you have to have someone that at least is on it. But I think, you know, I made the decision that, you know, quite early on that I wanted to stay self-funded. I've seen a lot of friends who have gone a different route, and I think it's different things for different people. But you know, I've seen for all of the good things, I've seen a lot of very difficult situations, you know, with investment, you know, having people in your business actually end up you don't, you know. So I was really, really sort of fixed on that, and sometimes it is hard because I've seen other people, friends that maybe launched similar businesses similar time to me, and they've gone on and grown and scaled very quickly because they did have external investment. But I've kind of really stood true to that, and I, you know, and there have been times I have questioned it, but I feel, you know, I wanted to you know, it has also meant that I've got, you know, there's no one, a lot of the decision making, I'm very agile because I haven't got anyone else to kind of consult on things. So but no, I think being self-funded for, you know, all the good stuff, it has, you know, there are times when, you know, it is really, really, you know, super tricky. And you know, we've had, I mean, I said I'm very, very, you know, probably I'm really, well, for me, paying people is my, you know, my team is my non-negotiable. You know, that if the reality is you'll always be the one that doesn't get paid, or, you know, and I think for a long time, because I've constantly been, you know, a lot of people I think will look at me and look at my business and actually probably assume that I probably, you know, do earn a lot, and I have, you know, I you know, got a lot of money, and obviously I have been quite savvy and put my money in property and things like that. But at the same time, for a lot of the time, I was constantly reinvesting back. You know, we weren't on, you know, we did forgo holidays and things because we had to constantly put it back into the business. And that was a decision that I made. So I think there are a lot of sacrifices as well that, and obviously, the reality is, you know, I'm working to, you know, I am scaling, growing to exit my business. I have a plan. So, you know, and I've built an asset and a business that's, you know, and, you know, TishTash is a brand in itself now. So I've kind of, you know, that is my plan to obviously be able to sell one day. So there was a plan, but it has been, you know, money and finances is definitely one of the hardest things too.
Yeah, I think when people go into business or have an idea for a business, like, finance, both the finance for the business and the knock-on effect on your own personal finances are oftentimes very much overlooked. And it's hard to explain to someone the feeling of how you might not get paid for, I think you said 8 months, someone said earlier, could be even 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, where you're not either getting paid or getting paid anywhere near as much as you would if you had a regular job. So I think that, you can't explain that to someone. That is something you almost have to live through and experience to truly understand. But again, the goal here is that we continue to shed light on the realities of starting a business and growing a business over a period of time, because there's not really much point in starting a business for a year or two, because you're not going to benefit much at all, if not just completely lose everything. So I think that financial well-being aspect on a personal level is probably something that's everybody expects a successful outcome, but oftentimes it takes much, much longer than anticipated. If it happens, if the truly successful outcome happens at all. So, I think it's really important that anyone that's thinking of starting a business really has that clarity, I guess. I don't think, some people say, I need to save up a year's worth of, salary or a safety net. I personally don't agree with that, because I think if you wait for the safety net to be big enough and, tight enough, you'll never do it. But you do have to have that kind of your eyes wide open rather than those rose-tinted glasses on. So
I mean, I always say that I think I had the first 2 years when I was more like freelancing, but working, didn't have an office, had very little overheads, was working from home. With some freelance support, I probably earned sort of the most kind of like, earned really well because I had no overheads and I had some good clients. Then I think it was like kind of as soon as we stepped up to an office and obviously like onshore licensing and everything, our costs escalated. Then we got more and more team. I think for them, maybe the next 10 years, or maybe 8-9 years, it was kind of, it was proper just constant reinvestment. And then it is only, I mean, obviously COVID then was a little bit of a bump, but I think it's only kind of now the past 2 years, so sort of years 11 to 13, where actually then you start earning kind of good money again. So I think it is that kind of understanding that, I mean, sometimes I think when I've had a bad moment, I kind of like, thinking, what am I doing with my life? And, at least before I had a really well-paid corporate job and I could go into Harvey Nichols and buy anything I wanted to. And now I'm more stressed and I can't even go into Harvey Nichols. It's like kind of like, you do question your kind of judgments a bit. But
How have you uncovered, a big part of being an entrepreneur and growing a business is kind of continuously reinventing yourself, learning, developing, growing. How have you uncovered any blind spots that you have had? Like, are there people that will tell you have them, or have you been able to work with someone to uncover them? Like, how have you gone through it? Because I'm quite confident that you don't build and grow a business over 13 years without, being a different version of Tash, if not every year, every few years. So how have you enabled yourself to kind of like uncover those blind spots and kind of develop yourself and grow?
I do. Like, I've got a really, really good support network as well. I think, if I look back, even my group of friends and everything, when I started, I think most people, it's very different to what it is today. I think most of my close friends now, we're all entrepreneurs, business owners. I think it kind of happens quite naturally, I think, as well. Like, there's the reality is, when all your friends are brunching or out and then you're having to make decisions that, to work and things, the friendship groups do change. So I think, it's great now I've got friends, a support group that get it when actually, I actually really can't do that. They, they'll still be your friend even if, if you can't go to things as much as normal. So I think definitely surrounding yourself with the right network's really important. At least then you've got people to sense check things with. But I think also I have had some really, really good mentors and some really good coaches, even though I don't really like the word coach. But I there's people that I work with that are phenomenal. Like I've got a really, really amazing kind of performance coach that works with me and my business. And I think that's been really game changing, quite confronting as well, because doesn't let me, holds me up against everything, which is what they should do. But I do believe, knowing the areas as well where you are, like kind of, maybe that you need support, or Look, I think there's been times I've made some mistakes in that area as well.
Yeah.
I think my learning was some people trying to come into my business and tell me what I couldn't do, and and maybe like make me feel that I was less than in some ways, versus actually people that really have come and really added a lot to my kind of sort of world. So I think definitely we can't do it alone. I think it is building that network and people around you and looking at things with new eyes and new viewpoints. I think it's really important.
Having been on that journey and grown and developed, you said that you meet with your team members, regularly. You mentor or reverse mentor. If someone from your team or anyone else for that matter approached you and said, "I'm looking at building starting my own business, whether it's in comms or beauty or wellness, whatever," what would be your main kind of either advice or things that they should look out for? Like, what would be the guidance that you would give them as someone starting a business in 2025?
I think I would always say, like, I would encourage everyone to like live their dream, and if that's what they really want to do, go for it. Because I think if you've got that kind of like itch, and you're thinking, then it's it's better to go and have a go. Always better to have done something than not. But I'm always very, very honest and say, look, it is like you've got to really want to do it. You've got to kind of, and that's why as well, like when some of my staff, it has happened, and I've said parallel, let's start it in the background of things, just be open and honest about things or whatever, and then give it a go. At least they've got a bit of a support network rather than having to like just step away completely. But I think everybody should be able to, we've all got is one life, right? So I think you need to, I'd support anybody in doing what they want to do to sort of live their sort of best life. And I'm always like, I'll always open my one of the reasons I love Dubai as well, I think it's very generally as a whole, it's very supportive, it's very can do, and so I will always support anybody. Even I often will have coffees with people who come to my office who just want a bit of advice. I think it's without any motivation. It's like I think it's really, really I had some people that did that for me, and I really always remember it. So I think if we can support and help others and give, we should do it.
I think the great thing about building a business here is that it's in Dubai it's quite a small network, in that you're never very far from someone that you need to be connected to. And same for me, in 2015 when I first moved here full time and worked here for a couple of years before. But the people that I connect, a lot of the people I connected with in those early days, I'm still friends with now. I mentioned someone earlier who I still play golf with, who's a common friend and mentor to myself, and Sophie from Nabta Health, and those connections have stayed. And I think the great thing about Dubai is that more and more people are staying for longer and longer. Because back 10, 12, 15 years ago, people were typically coming here for a much shorter period of time.
You couldn't stay here, you couldn't be here forever.
But thanks to businesses like yours and even businesses like Level and other businesses that have now been around for 5, 10, close to 15 years, you have that. There is an ecosystem, right? There is a startup, there is a business culture, and it's a really incredible time to be here. And it's there's if you ask someone for a coffee, it's very rare that someone says no. Some might be more difficult to schedule than others, but it's very rare that someone says no to coffee. So probably that would be the advice to anyone starting, is just be prepared to drink a lot of coffee and just build that network. You mentioned you now have an exit plan, so maybe we're in like the final phase of TishTash's growth under your ownership or leadership, one or the other or both. Have you thought about life post-exit?
Well, I don't believe in retirement. I think retirement I don't think it's good for anyone's sort of health. I've seen that with my own parents, and I feel very strongly about that. So I think, look, there's things, obviously I love property. I've done a lot of renovation myself. That's something I'm really passionate about. So I think that's definitely something I've got, doing bits of, but I'd like to do more of. I think obviously, I've wanted to write books for a long time. That's something that it's a joke now that I'm writing a book slowly because I have been for such a long time. But I definitely see that as something that I really want to do.
Yeah.
I think the reality is when I do joke now, it's like, obviously I have got a plan and everything, but there's still so much I want to do, even with my business. So I think, never say never. You never know where things go. But I definitely, I think I'll always have now. I'm very much my sort of fingers in different sort of pies. And so, yeah, I don't know. There is still so much I want to do. And I love, obviously, I used to paint and I used to do my art, which the funny thing is when I first moved here, so it was 15 years ago, and I had my business selling my paintings was doing really well in the UK, and I had in galleries and I had like different showings. And then when I moved here, I literally came with no paintings and nothing because I was like, oh no, it's fine. I'll repaint them when I get to Dubai, for my house or anything. And then now we're 15 years and I've never painted once since I've been here.
Wow.
And I think, and like most people, if they don't know me, would not even know that's part of my kind of journey. Whereas if I, go back home and people always ask me about or people come to my house here and they're like, oh, you've got none of your paintings. And I'm like, I don't have any. So I think definitely I want to do something creative as well. That's something I think that even probably sooner, I feel that's very good for me and my mental health. So I kind of, there's certain things I'm kind of looking at. So
maybe that's the pathway to finding that balance after nearly 15 years. So
yeah, I think so.
Well, I wanted to thank you. Thank you for coming in and joining me, having never met. It was very, brave and open of you because it could have gone anywhere. But, we've been connected for a while on LinkedIn, and I think you're, as the others that I reached out to, your authenticity is incredible. I love how you kind of lead with openness and transparency. The culture that you've created at TishTash is obviously incredible. I'm sure all of the team would say that too. And I know for a fact that some of your clients and partners do for sure. And yeah, please keep going, because we need more people like yourself to, lead with that kind of empathy, as you've said, but just that transparency, the transparency of the highs and the lows and the lows of building a business and the challenges that we have to overcome. And the more we can talk about it, the more open we can be. Hopefully, the more people we can impact and help shape their journey too. So again, thanks so much for coming in, and I look forward to seeing how this next phase pans out for you.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me.